It's such a privilege for me to be able to share a few thoughts with you about Red Wednesday. I wanted to make this recording here in my beautiful church because I know that for many people around the world, the simple freedom to visit a church and to pray there is something that they lack. They know that violent men target churches and that they target the people that visit them too. So they do not dare go. We're so lucky this is not the case for us. We can come safely to pray in our churches, for which thank God. But I want to express some solidarity today with people who don't dare go to a place they so desperately want to be. Over the last few years, I've been lucky enough to travel several times to Romania, and I've become quite friendly with a priest and his wife. Married men are allowed to be ordained as priests in the Eastern Catholic churches. Near to the village where they live is a town on the border with Ukraine, and in the middle of the town there is a large building that at first sight looks quite ordinary. In fact, it's the memorial to the victims of communism in Romania, formerly a notoriously cruel prison. And in that prison, countless people simply disappeared, including a number of Catholic priests, men a little bit like me. I've known, of course, about the persecution of Christians for many years, but it was only when I stood in some of the former cells of that prison where fear and violence almost seems to hang on the walls still, where priests like me had been locked away and tortured just for what they believed, that it really hit home. All this was happening there until just 30 years ago. Now the building's a tourist attraction. 30 years ago it was a symbol of hate and intolerance, as well as a tool of oppression. Standing in the middle of the town, it said to everyone who walked along the street outside, "This is where you'll end up if you dare to disagree." Just a few hundred yards from that prison where so many people suffered is a rather pretty little blue house, also now a museum. It was the childhood home of Elie Wiesel, who was a Holocaust survivor and writer. After the Second World War, he told the story of the Jews of that town, rounded up, deported, and killed out of hate. Amongst the many things that he wrote was this: "There may be times when we are powerless to prevent injustice, but there must never be a time when we fail to protest." One of the lessons of the 20th century is that powerful oppressors thrive on silence, on people saying nothing, on people being too embarrassed or too frightened to say anything at all. If people look on and watch as others are attacked, doing nothing and staying silent, then the men of violence will always win. Elie Wiesel goes on to say, "We must take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Sometimes we must interfere. When human lives are endangered, when human dignity is in jeopardy, national borders and sensitivities become irrelevant. Wherever men and women are persecuted because of their race, religion, or political views, that place must, at that moment, become the center of the universe." This is why we are keeping Red Wednesday. It's to remind ourselves that all over the world and in countless different ways, men of violence turn on the weak and oppress them. Particularly, we know, people are turned on because of their religious faith. And so very often it is Christians like you and me, who suffer this persecution. The men of violence want to silence the people they hate. They want to make them disappear. They want to say to them, "Nobody cares. You are forgotten." And on Red Wednesday we stand up and we shout together, "No, this is not true. You are not forgotten, and we care." Imagine what a difference it must make to someone locked away in a cell somewhere or hiding in their home because they are afraid to go out. If they can know that they are not alone, not forgotten, and that all over the world people are stopping what they are doing to stand beside them. The men of violence want to hide them away and silence them. Our response is to say, as Elie Wiesel tells us, "You are not forgotten, far from it. Just at this moment, you and your troubles, you are the center of the universe." This year, Aid to the Church in Need is inviting us to keep Red Wednesday by standing up for faith and freedom. This means saying no to oppression and prejudice, but it also means saying no to silence. How do we do this? We can find out about ways in which people are being persecuted just because of their faith. We can pray for them. We can write to our political leaders, tell them what we have found out, and ask them to take action to help people being persecuted for their faith. There's nothing very controversial here. No one is in favour of prejudice or violence or hatred, but many people are ignorant about it. They just don't know. So we need to tell them. But also we can make a conscious decision in our minds to stand beside people who might otherwise think that they were alone. Imagine you're locked away somewhere because of your faith, either kept in prison or so frightened of other people that you are too scared to go out. The best thing, of course, is to be set free, but the next best thing is to know that you are not forgotten, that someone, somewhere, is standing up for you, is standing beside you. That is what we can do. We can give just a little bit of our time to stand beside people who are being persecuted for their faith. Aid to the Church in Need is giving us some examples to help us to think about this. So in our minds, let us stand with them. In the Gospels, we read again and again about how Jesus went to stand with people who everyone else avoided. On the edge of a town, not allowed into the village, not allowed to be with other people, that's where he goes. It's time for us to do the same. We will stand with women in Syria who have had to leave their homes because of the war and to rely on the church for food packages, hygiene kits, nappies for their children. We will stand with you. We will stand with orphans of war, the injured and refugees from Sierra Leone. We will stand with you too. We will stand with the Christians and Muslims in the Philippines, working together to promote understanding, as well as a just, humane and ecologically sound society. Will stand with you as well. We will stand for peace for children in Syria who lived through the civil war and felt they had their childhood stolen from them. We will stand with you. We will stand with schoolgirls in Nigeria, people like Leah Sharibu. Leah and over 100 of her classmates were abducted in February 2018, and the others were all released within a few days, but Leah, the only Christian in the group, remains in captivity still because she has refused to deny her faith in Jesus Christ. We will stand with you. We will stand for tolerance and in solidarity with those Sri Lankans who were injured or who died in attacks over a previous Easter with their families and the community of Sri Lankans. Many are now too scared to go to church, but we will go to church for you, and we will stand with you. We will stand with the sick and elderly in Eritrea who were forced from their hospital beds when the military occupied and closed hospitals and are now being deprived of vital medical care usually provided for them by the church. We're going to stand with them as well. We will stand also with all of the victims of forgotten, hidden conflicts that never make the news. We want to stand with you as well. Let's stand together with everyone, wherever they may be, who is being persecuted for their faith. Of course, we identify ourselves first of all with our brother and sister Christians who want the simple freedom to do what we do, to go to church and worship with joy and liberty. But we also want to stand with everyone of whatever faith who is not free to worship. Here is one final quotation from the Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel. Perhaps it could be our closing message for Red Wednesday this year, something for us to think about in the days that lie ahead. He wrote this: "Human suffering anywhere concerns men and women everywhere." Have a good Red Wednesday.